About to show these boys how we do it. You ready? Higher, further, faster, baby. Yes, baby.
Captain Marvel released into theaters this weekend. It's the 20th film in Marvel Studios' ongoing franchise that spans more than a decade and is the enviable example of success within the film industry. By and large, audiences love them, fans love them, critics love them, and I love them. But there's something we need to talk about, because with this new film, there's something different, something sinister. There's a political agenda happening behind the scenes to force a dangerous ideology on an unassuming young audience. It's true. Captain Marvel has a politics problem.
We are sick and tired of you and your parent company Disney cramming your SJW bullcrap down our throats.
Nope, it's not that.
It became a social justice issue where it's like, oh, now the angry misogynists are telling women to smile, and it's like, you're missing the point. The point was that she was rigid and boring.
Nope, not that either.
In fact, I think the only reason why Marvel Comics keeps on printing Captain Marvel comics is not because they sell really well, but it's because Marvel wants to push their SJW agenda.
No, the problem isn't feminism, it's the military, okay guys? Go soak your testicles in ice water or do whatever you do when that blood vessel in your forehead threatens to pop because you can't stop complaining about women for 5 minutes. No, Captain Marvel wants to send young women to war. I'm Ashley Lynch, and this is Media Offline, a video series about the ways we consume popular culture.
Captain Marvel. Now let me clarify, Captain Marvel's gone by many names in the comics, has had many people who have inhabited that costume, used that power base. I want to make it very clear that this Captain Marvel's name is Carol Danvers.
Captain Marvel started out as Carol Danvers, United States Air Force pilot, before, becoming an ultra-powerful intergalactic hero that's going to rescue our broken hearts from Thanos and his finger-licking murder glove.
Every superhero has an origin story.
It's that identity of United States Air Force pilot that both Marvel and the Air Force have leaned into hard, with a quote-unquote mutually beneficial arrangement to promote each other.
Higher, further, faster, baby. Yes, baby.
There's long been a collusive relationship between Hollywood and the US military. Big budget movies that need access to stuff like helicopters, tanks, subs, bases, troops, and even logos have to go through a vigorous vetting process. The script has to be reviewed and approved by the Pentagon. There's lots of movies that don't get through the vetting process and stall because they can't get military approval or assistance. Navy Chief of Information Rear Admiral Denny Moynihan describes it as something that accurately portrays the Navy and have a positive impact on recruiting.
You can be my wingman anytime. Bullshit. You can be mine.
Dave, you can take a late roll. Ready? And action! Action! And, no, sir, stay.
DreamWorks Productions selected Holloman as a location in the live-action film Transformers. During shooting in late May, the base became a working movie set featuring Air Force aircraft and hundreds of airmen working as extras.
But even if you get military assistance and access to all their hardware and facilities, there's a liaison there and set to make sure that nothing filmed is against the interests of the military. It's not free support either. Transformers paid the Pentagon $800,000 for their participation in the film.
Michael Bay is directing the film. He's worked with the military on past movies including Armageddon and Pearl Harbor.
The military adds such a credibility and it adds such a realism to the movie. And I think the military are looking at this in two ways. One, besides the fun factor, they're looking at this in the serious thing. It's a recruiting factor because this hits an age range. It's a broad age range, this movie, Transformers, from the 40-year-olds to the young kids. And
Michael Bay loves using military assistance, and it's no wonder why the military loves Michael Bay. It's hard to imagine a recruitment video better produced than any given scene from one of his films.
Vic, cover the rear end! Cover the rear, go away! Come on! Give your man! Where's your papa? Where's your papa? Papa! Sorry.
You know, I I put the military in a very good light, and I make them heroic and strong, and you know, and it's always been a wild experience whenever I've worked with the military, and they've been so. Don't worry, it's okay, it's planned.
Even Michael Bay has to kowtow to military liaisons changing the script on the fly, like this line in Transformers, which was written by Pentagon Hollywood liaison Phil Straub because the DoD had a vested interest in portraying the narrative that US military always brings their troops home.
Bring them home. You get those men stateside right now. I want them debriefed in 10 hours.
First Iron Man had a line where an Air Force pilot says, "People would kill for the opportunities that I have." But the military liaison nixed it for fear that it would remind audiences that suicide rates of military personnel are very real and alarmingly high. We can't have the public realizing while watching a costumed hero face-punching movie that training a bunch of government-sanctioned murder squads mostly just results in fatal depression and emotional trauma.
Do you have what it takes? Find out at goarmy.com/warriors.
And what do we say? Go down! Roll down!
Crimson Tide famously couldn't get military support because they were depicting a mutiny aboard a US Navy submarine, so they filmed with assistance from the French Navy, and to get the shot of the USS Alabama submerging, the film crew had to wait for a US sub to launch out of Pearl Harbor and then chase after it guerrilla style in a helicopter. And while the movie hinges on conflict within the chain of command, the actual film is still drenched in total admiration for the US Navy and becomes indistinguishable from a recruitment ad.
I expect and demand your very best. Anything less, you should have joined the Air Force.
All of this is to make sure that the only version of the military you ever see is one that is virtuous, noble, determined, and superior. They can do no wrong, and there is never anything to criticize. But even more than that, the DoD sees Hollywood as a tool for recruitment. Movies get butts in seats, and those butts have to leave the theater sometime. Guess who's waiting for them with an application form and stories of adventure outside?
Gents, you know we're looking at you, right? You guys ever think about joining up?
Just look at these young men, being sold a one-way ticket to Danger Zone! When preparing their home video release of Top Gun, Paramount asked the US Navy if they were interested in producing an ad for the Navy that would play before the film. The Navy declined, saying that the film itself was already a better recruitment tool, and that including an ad would just be redundant. They were right. Recruitment in the Air Force went up 500% after Top Gun.
It's something that the US government's never been able to do since, is duplicate what happened after that movie came out. You know what I mean? By the way, who do you think the biggest backer financially was of that movie? The Air Force. Same answer. So you're telling me the Air Force paid for a movie? You bet. And they got results.
I mean, look at these guys. Don't you want to fly an F-16 just like Tom Cruise? Don't you want to wear sunglasses like that? Don't you want to hang around with guys named Goose and Iceman and Cyclops? Oh, and the Navy forced Top Gun to change Kelly McGillis' character from an enlisted woman to outside personnel, because it's against the rules for officers to be in a relationship.
When the world was brought to its knees, the Army was there to fight back. Promised us that this would never happen again. They have been the driving force in uniting nations around the world to form the most powerful weapon against another attack. The Earth-Space Defense.
Recently, the military has gotten even more brazen in how they want to use movies to drive recruitment. For 2016's Independence Day resurgence, the US Army created an entire ad campaign asking people to join the Earth-Space Defense, or ESD. You could even go to the 20th Century Fox branded webpage for the film, and by handing over all your Facebook info, play online games related to Independence Day, and then get taken to a US Army recruitment page. As audiences start to become numb to straightforward advertising, the line between entertainment and military recruitment propaganda gets increasingly blurred.
I fought in the war in '96. I know what those things are capable of. But I know what my daughter is capable of. And I know this planet is safer because she's defending it.
Which brings us back to the problem with Captain Marvel.
I think it's safe to say that Captain Marvel is going full Lady Ghostbusters.
No, not that. God, where did all these guys come from? No, I mean this.
Take a look at this. This is live from Skyfox, the U.S. Air Force's elite Thunderbirds. They're in town. They're celebrating the Hollywood movie premiere of Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel is engaging in an unprecedented recruitment campaign with the Air Force to tie a massively popular comic book franchise in with a government organization that wants more bodies to serve as weapons of war.
The core of her is the Air Force.
The Air Force gave Marvel Studios Michael Bay level assistance, and in return, the Air Force gets this.
It's a great honor for the men and women of the 57th Wing to be able to share this thing that is the Air Force.
You're so cool.
Their ads, their website, every forward-facing piece of advertising by the Air Force right now is to laser focus on young women and scare quote inspire them to join the Air Force.
Higher, further, faster, baby. Yes, babe.
Higher. Further. Faster.
Hey girls, don't you want to be a superhero? Don't you want a cool uniform? Don't you want to fly in a jet just like Carol Danvers? Don't you want to fight the patriarchy by dropping bombs on brown people and developing an untreatable PTSD?
Yes.
And it's in this context that Carol Corps, the self-attributed name for die-hard Captain Marvel comic fans, starts to take on a more sinister propagandistic tone. I'm not dragging Captain Marvel the movie. I saw it this weekend and absolutely loved it, and any jingoistic military propaganda in the film is minimal at best. In fact, Carol's pilot life is so minimized in the film that it would have been possible for Marvel to make this movie without any military assistance at all.
How do I look? Fresh.
But this relationship that Marvel has struck to take a comic book movie that will undoubtedly be inspiring so many young women and tie it directly to military recruitment is more than a little troubling. And she is inspiring. Comic writer and goddess Kelly Sue DeConnick did an incredible job reimagining this character into a powerful and inspiring figure that is now going to be immortalized on screen for millions of young women to look up to. But in just a slightly different context, becomes just another recruitment ad.
Higher. Further. Faster.
Yeah, for some time now, the Air Force has been in a pilot shortage. Pilot retention is down, and the branch cannot train pilots fast enough.
The Air Force needs this too. They're anxiously looking for more bodies to fill their ranks, and they knew that Captain Marvel could be their Top Gun for a new century. Or at least until Top Gun 2. And this particularly bothers me, not because it's all propaganda, even though it is all propaganda, but because representation in media matters. We need more characters like Carol Danvers, and they do have a substantive effect. In what's been called the Scully effect, there's a documented spike in women going into STEM fields directly as a result of seeing Gillian Anderson's character in X-Files.
The character of Dana Scully was a physics major and inspired me to major in physics and go through and get my PhD, and thank you. And I wanted to know if this is something you've heard a lot.
I think there was something called the Scully effect. Just a huge amount more women who were getting into the sciences around when the X-Files was on than they had experienced before.
Anderson herself has talked about the massive amounts of mail she gets from young women saying that their career is due in no small part to them being able to look at another woman on TV doing that job. They were inspired and it became possible, and they achieved. If Dana Scully inspires young women to go into STEM fields, then Carol Danvers is going to inspire young women to seek a career in the military as well. And the United States Air Force knows this, otherwise they wouldn't be spending the money that they are right now trying to recruit young women. The United States already has such a strange relationship with the military. lack of ability to criticize the military on any level has gotten to absurd proportions, to the point where an NFL player can't protest police violence without people making it about a lack of respect for the military. Since 2012, the Pentagon has spent over $100 million on patriotic displays at sporting events and sports sponsorships. That's Air Force flyovers, that's national anthem ceremonies, and it's NASCAR branding. The U.S. Department of Defense is spending an unprecedented amount of money tying entertainment to military patriotism to the point that they cannot be separated, and it's all for one purpose.
It's a recruiting factor because this hits an age range. It's a broad age range. It's really 40-year-olds to the young kids.